So we have everyone. All right. So I do not have a gavel, but I'm calling this special meeting to order to discuss the mask policy. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I don't know if we have a flag, but oh, very nice. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of
America
America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
God,
nation,
indivisible,
God, indivisible,
justice
with
for all.
justice for all. Oh, God.
Thank you. Okay, guys, thanks so much. All right, thank you everyone for meeting. As I just wanted everyone who's joining us in the public and of course my colleagues on the board, we decided to call this meeting during vacation as we wanted to provide as much clarity as we could to the community as quickly as possible after the legislature met. So that's why we're meeting here via Zoom. As you can see, some people like Karen Hirsch are walking with palm trees in the background. So everyone, many of us are on vacation and I know many of the public are on vacation, but thank you so much everyone for joining us. Like I said, this is purely about our mask policy. And as a result, I'm going to turn it over to Christina Downey, who chairs the Policy Governance Committee, to kick us off.
Thank you, Kathleen. So the sole agenda item is a presentation of board policy. I'm not going to list all the numbers right now, for discussion and possible suspension or rescission of that policy. I think probably the best way to proceed is to get the discussion started is I'm going to make a motion, and then we can have discussion afterwards. So I move that policy 4118.237, also known as 4218.237 or 5141.8, that it be rescinded effective the commencement of the school day on March 1st, 2022.
I second the motion.
Great.
So just by way of background, so that people are aware, policy governance did not have an opportunity to meet on this. So we have had individual discussions, but there is no recommendation from the policy committee on this matter. People will remember that the policy was we had a mask policy put in place. We put it in effect for this current school year in August with a proviso that the board would meet to determine any modifications or revisions to the policy in the event that orders or mandates from the state of Connecticut were going to expire. At this moment in time, we have been expired that at a state level as of February 28th. And this is why I put March 1st in the motion, because we're not really sure, is it midnight on the 28th or one, so obviously we said March 1st is a safer time to say. So that's why the motion says that. So where we are tonight. The mask policy was put in place given the COVID situation, which obviously differs now from March 2020, August 2020, when we returned to school in August of 21. The variety of vaccination rates and other mitigation strategies that have gone on. I think, just to be clear, that if we choose to pass this motion, I've seen nothing in any of our policies that prevents anyone from wearing a mask who chooses to do so. We have nothing in terms of a dress code or other policies. So it would be at an individual's choice. So just wanted to make that clear. And I also wanted to just point out that their school buses, I believe, are going to be treated differently because that's under federal law. So I will give my own point of view on that, but I think we would all like to hear from Dr. Jones, from her consultation with our local health officials, in terms of what's going on there. And also, Dr. Jones, if, as you're telling us, we'd like to talk about, in the event that the motion passes, I think we're going to need some procedures or regulations. For example, people who test positive, or if a parent sends a child in a mask, and it's the expectation that that child is wearing it, how we're going to be managing that. And that's not for tonight, but I think just to put you on alert for that. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jones at this time to give us more data.
Thank you for that, Christina. You are correct in that we'll have more guidance that's coming out, which we have done since the very beginning of COVID. That's really not new for us at all. Right now, the Connecticut Department of Health has sent at least 2 notices this week to say they're working on guidance. We don't have anything from them at this point, and that's where they look at the CDC, they look at Connecticut Department of Health to determine things like quarantines, which I think is what you were referencing. So we don't know where they're going to land on that. We do feel from a health-related team that we can support what the Connecticut Department of Health and the governor have put forward, and that it's a positive step forward. But I will say we've had a lot of discussion. These are never easy decisions. So I think everybody in the state will be watching with great care. I also just want to say our health team really allowed us to have a great conversation about the educational quality. And I think that has to be just as important in this discussion as the safety aspect, because it really goes hand in hand. We had discussions about, what is the percentage with this really new variant and Omicron of protection that children get if they're not in a 95, or that staff get if they're not wearing an N95. And most of our students and staff do not wear a 95 mask. So we weighed issues like that. We also looked at what is our vaccination rate. Our staff vaccination rate is at 97%. Our 12 to 17 is at 95%. And our 5 to 11-year-olds are 49% that have completed, but we have another 10% that are in the process. So we feel like we've got a lot of really good indicators to move in this direction. And I think it's a great step forward, and we're very, very hopeful for the rest of the year. I'll leave it at that.
I was going to ask everyone to raise their hand. It seems like Mr. Kelly has already figured that out. So as a result, Joe?
Well, great. Thank you. And I'm very happy that we're going to vote on suspending this this mask requirement on my birthday. It's very happy on March 1st that we can start that with kids and make that all good, make it by choice, family choice, rather than mandatory. Question I have, Dr. Jones, is there's some confusion. I've asked this question before, and I just want to keep asking. There's 2 questions I have. The first question I have is, do we, when we vote to suspend this mask wearing requirement, do we have to return any of our ESSER funding that we received?
No, the ESSER funding doesn't have anything to do with mask wearing, other than where we've had ESSER 1 or ESSER 2, or where we've needed to buy PPE and not have to go for an interim to the town. But there's no requirement whatsoever. So no. So
none of the mask wearing was we were required to do that in order to get funded in some way by ESSER funding. Okay, good.
No.
I've asked that before. I just want to keep asking that and make sure it remains consistent. Second question would be, now the governor retains his superpowers given to him by the legislator to once again make us wear masks, make our kids wear masks in school. He just basically, the state legislature has given him that power for the next 2 months. So if he decides to do that, it's once again out of our control and in his control. So there's nothing we could do about it until he once again, either his power ends, I believe it's 60 days, please correct me if I'm incorrect, or he once again puts an end to it and we get to vote on it or not. That is correct. Is that right?
I just have a newer attorney opinion that I saw on that, and I do believe it goes all the way through June, but it actually delegates the authority really to the Connecticut Department of Health, advising the governor. So it really is the Connecticut Department of Health that would make a decision at the state level.
So it could fall out of our control again, by where the state can make a requirement for our kids to wear masks again in school, and that could very well be out of our control again. Is that possible?
That is possible, absolutely. And we'll continue, I'm sure, to get refinement of issues from the attorneys at the state level.
And the good news is that on March 1st, if we vote affirmatively on this, that the kids will not be required to wear masks. Okay, that's good. I'm finished. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Looked like Karen raised her hand next. Ms. Hirsch?
Sorry, you'll have to bear with me. I'm currently touring a college. And my family's wandering off. I had a quick question in regards to I know you mentioned that we haven't gotten any guidance from the Connecticut State Department of Health, but I was wondering if the Greenwich Department of Health had sort of weighed in on some of their thoughts, just to see if we rescind this policy, what might be put in place as a flexible policy in regards to something based on local transmission rates. For instance, if we face another Omicron outbreak again, if we needed to possibly consider putting masks back into place for transmission rates, if they reach that level for a short window of time. That was question number one. But sorry. So I'll let you answer that question first, and then I have one other comment.
So I was on a call last week at the state level, and Mary Keller, our head of nursing, is on a call every Tuesday morning. What they told us is that there will be no metrics in Connecticut. Now, as you know, during COVID, they can say one thing one day, the next day things change. So we've all learned that. But they're telling us there will not be a metric that they'll be utilizing like we did last year, where we had the different colors and when you reached a certain level. So we'll have to wait and see what they come out with. From the difference between, if we go and ask our health professionals across the state, there really is no agreement, I would say. Our local health department would certainly like to be much more conservative than the Connecticut Department of Health. And that's where it gets really challenging trying to make a decision like this. We have when the health team meets, and we discuss these issues, you're all looking at it from a different lens. Like for me, educational quality was a big piece this time, because I really feel like we have little kindergartners that were in full remote half of their kindergarten year, and they've been in mask for early childhood time. And I do feel like from an educational quality standpoint, and this comes from somebody who has a master's in reading, I do think that it impedes and doesn't provide the highest level that I think we could provide right now and do it safely. But again, we'll be watching and monitoring like we have throughout this entire time. We'll keep the tracker going, keep informing our community so that we are keeping an eye on it.
The other question would be, have we gotten any guidance in regards to what we do for students who are quarantining after the 5 days? I know that it has been suggested by the CDC and beyond that after 5 days, they could return to school and then with a mask. So I, again, wonder how we will be handling that in the situation.
Right now, that is the guidance that we're getting at the local and the state level, but until they codify that, at the state, I'm not 100% sure, but it does follow what CDC recommends. 5 days at home, you have to stay home for 10 days. If you don't want to wear a mask, you could come back to school after 5 days with a mask. But again, until we actually see what the Connecticut Department of Health is recommending along with our local health, we won't have that answer. But I think there's strong support for that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I've spoken to countless physicians, epidemiologists, many people who have been studying this, and I fully understand that mental health is just as important as physical health. And I appreciate that you have discussed how this affects our youngest learners and those who really need visual cues as well as audio, not being able to hear through masks and so forth. So thank you for adding that information for us as well.
All right, thank you, Karen, for the tour. I believe that was UCSB that you're at, so thank you for that.
It is indeed.
It is. Great, one of my favorite places in the world. Next up is Cody Kettle.
Kathleen, I had just a few comments that I wanted to make after we vote, but I was going to suggest, I'm pretty sure no one on the call is still making up their mind on this. Should we just get right to voting first, and then would we have room to make any comments after?
Go ahead, Christina. Sorry, we're going to say we like to do the discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say it's more appropriate to have it during comments during discussion, because once the vote is taken, the vote's taken. Cody.
Right. So that's why it's discussion then action.
Well, I'll spare you guys of trying to convince anyone on this call of anything, but we can, afterwards, I'd like to make a comment or two.
Okay. Michael Joseph.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Jones, I was curious about the other mitigation strategies out there. We've heard different stories and things like that. I'm unclear like to what extent plexiglass is still being used and things like that. And I didn't know, I'm sure you're looking at all these things as part of the new guidance and things, but I was particularly curious about the plexiglass and if that's still in general use.
Yeah, so what I would say is it's one step at a time, taking this tonight. For mitigation strategies, they change according to what's happening within the district. So, we start to loosen up, and then we've had over the point in time over the last 2 years where we've had to tighten back up again at the advice of our health advisors. There are some staff that feel safer with plexi, and what's really important is making sure that we keep our staff in school, that we keep our students in school. And I don't say this lightly, but I know as of last week, GEA had shared with us that our staff were split about the governor's proposal, and it was almost 50-50. So I think it's a fine line between what we want to do for children and do what we believe is right now, and also managing to make sure that our staff feel supported. So there are some teachers who are more nervous than others based on either their own health condition or a health condition perhaps in their household. And so we're slower with some of those mitigation strategies, but we keep taking steps in the right direction. We listen to our PTA. I meet with them every month. Things like field trips, trying to, get our kids back out and doing field trips. And we're doing all types of things that we weren't doing, even 8 months ago or, the end of last year. So the mitigation strategies, as we were discussing over this last really, I would say, 5-7 days, was really looking at every 2 to 3 weeks, what's happening, what is happening once we take the mask off? Do we see something that we didn't anticipate? Is there another variant? So we literally keep that data on a daily and a weekly basis, and we'll continue to watch that. And our goal is always, just like we did last year, was to loosen up and loosen up and loosen up, but not to just go and remove everything at one time, because then we don't know if we removed something that wouldn't have had an impact. So we're really looking at this over a 2 to 3 week strategy.
Okay. All right. So the only other thing I would, which I know you're thinking of, but I think it's important to say publicly, is when we think about guidance and we're crafting regulations here and how to support the schools here. Obviously, we also want to make sure we pay attention to our bullying policy and how our students are treating each other. If you have this situation, which it sounds like we're going to have, where you're going to have some students in masks and some students in it. Obviously, it is of the utmost importance that everyone is able to come to school feeling safe and secure. I know you know that, but I think reminding everybody of the bullying policy and making sure that's fully enforced is going to be essential during this transition period.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We will be in transition over the next, couple of weeks once this goes in, and certainly our educators will watch out for that type of behavior.
Thanks, Michael. It's a very good point. Christina?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Tony. I think the focus on the educational issues, particularly for our youngest learners, everything in life is a balance, right? Yeah, we're always balancing, risk reward in our lives. But I think at this point, we need to be focusing on the educational elements for our students. I think it's also, worthy of mention that, most people are kind of living a quasi-normal life. We're not masked like we were in the beginning of the pandemic. And I think that makes it particularly artificial to put our students and staff in masks for 6.5 hours a day when they should be really focusing on the learning, that the teaching and learning that's going on. So I appreciate that being important, maybe the most important element here.
Great. Karen, I think you were, and then Cody.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I echo Christina's comments on the issues around the developmental struggles and the educational struggles that our students are having with wearing masks. And I think I think we're all in agreement that it's time that we need to address those issues, and from a risk reward benefit and pros and cons and a benefit cost benefit analysis, I think we are there at the point where the educational needs of our students need to be addressed, and those can only be done so with moving forward and taking the masks off. And so I can appreciate the fact that the transition is going to have some repercussions, but I do think that now is the time, and I think that our students are well equipped to deal with the transition, and we can talk to our kids about how we treat students, those who wear masks and those who don't wear masks, and we can approach this new era of the pandemic with open arms and appreciating where people feel and have a comfort level. I just want to say, for all of those parents, the numerous parents and community members that have all emailed us, I've read all of the emails. I've tried to respond to all of the emails. I'm behind, but I've heard all of your comments, and I know many of you I've responded to, and I would try to do it to those that I haven't gotten to yet. I'm responding now. I've heard you. I've read all of them. I appreciate the comments. For those that are ready for masks to come off, I agree with you. I've said that over and over again. For those that are not ready, I hear you and I appreciate that. But I think we need to come to an understanding and a point where we need to move forward. And moving forward means that we as a society and a community need to know what's best for us and make those choices personally for ourselves. And that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm prepared to vote for tonight.
Cody, before we call the question, because I was going to say something and then call the question, but so we will have to then adjourn after, as soon as we take action. So if you want to say something, I suggest you add your 2 cents now.
Yeah, I figured I wasn't successful at getting the vote right away. So yeah, I just a few observations. One, I think this is a great birthday present for Joe. So I'm really happy that that lines up correctly. I wanted to compliment, I'm being a little presumptuous here in my comments, but I wanted to compliment fellow board members. I know this is kind of outside of the Board of Education. There's a lot of passion around this, but I think everybody worked really nicely together, and I did not see any of the sort of, I think it's important for the community or whichever people are spending their Wednesday night with us to know that it was just, it's been a real pleasure working with everyone. Everyone's been very open-minded, thoughtful. There's a lack of tribalism on the board, which I think is great, and I like that. I think it's worth acknowledging that our fellow board members are willing to lead on this. We're not saying we can't take action because we need some other bureaucrat out there to tell us what to do. I wanted to recognize the broader community. I think the grassroots movement around this, despite the amount of time it takes to get through the emails, there's been so many emails. They've been for the most part, very polite, very thoughtful, very scientific, and whether some people agree or not, I think it's just been really solid engagement. I wanted to say one really important point, which is I think talking about transmission rates is a bit of a non sequitur. And what's going to happen when we lift the mask mandate is we're going to see oscillations in cases. It's important to remember that if we had lifted the mask mandate, say, pre-Omicron, we would have seen a spike at North Miami the same way that we did with the mask. And it would have been a mistake then to say, oh, this is because we lifted the mask mandate. And it will be a mistake moving forward if either we see an increase because people have been on vacation and they're coming back, or if we see a decrease because, springtime, people are outside more. It would be inappropriate for people to say the masks are the reason it's going down. It would be inappropriate for them to say that it's going up. The reality is that there's never been a established causal relationship between cloth masks and transmission rates. And I think that that's broadly enough accepted now that we should separate any further interventions from the idea that whatever the rate is in town, that's somehow related to cloth masks. If we want to have conversations around surgical masks or more severe interventions, we should. But I think the cloth mask thing is, it's a non sequitur. Outside of that, I just wanted to also echo what Mike said on the bullying point. I think for any parents that are listening now eager to see masks go away, I would strongly encourage you to tell your kids that it's not, if someone else is wearing a mask, you wouldn't make fun of someone if they're in a cast or a wheelchair. You shouldn't make fun of someone if they're choosing to wear a mask. You don't know whatever reasons there are. And I think it'll do damage to the cause of mass choice if people aren't respectful of the freedom that everyone exercises in making their own choices. And then my last observation was I hope this is a teachable moment for students. I think this has been a failed experiment, and the costs have been greater than the benefits, and it's no one on this call is responsible for that. But I hope that when they're older, they can look back on this and go, man, deference to bureaucrats and authority figures doesn't always pay. So those are my observations, and thank you.
Thanks, Cody. Ms. Costin.
I just wanted to say that I apologize for the noise in the background. I'm at Universal Studios with my family on vacation, but I just wanted to say that I didn't come to my decision easily or lightly. I really want to say that I sort of resent being in the role of health official when we're education officials, but that's the role we've been given, unfortunately. But I do want to just say to all the parents who have reached out to us, earnestly and kindly and respectfully, it is, not easy in a very Instagram and Facebook perfect world to publicly say my kids are not all right. Things are not really peachy here. I know how hard that is and how sincerely they've been speaking to us. And I just want them to know that we have been listening.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. So I'm just going to, before I call the question, I just wanted to say it's really funny. I'm looking at how many people have joined us tonight on vacation, right? We're up to 2:30. And I think about a few of my colleagues were on the board with me when we had that summer call, when we sent our kids back to school and other districts did not go back, and we broke the license. Does anyone remember that? We had over 1,000 people join, so we had to up our license. And that was kind of our greatest hits moment because we actually got the kids back to school in the height of COVID because we used science and we were thoughtful. And one of the things I just want to say is that, and in a bipartisan manner, I want to thank Governor Lamont and Selectman Camillo, because together they really kept us healthy during this pandemic. And I really appreciate all the things they did. I know that Fred's also relaxing the mandate in the town, and I appreciate how wise he's been throughout all this. I think their leadership in the state and at the town level has really allowed us to manage a sort of difficult health situation. I want to thank Dr. Jones, her team, the principals who I know have been tirelessly dealing with this for a couple of years, the teachers who keep telling the kids to put their masks up. I mean, that was not the job they signed up for, right? And they did an amazing job throughout all of this. But mostly let's thank the students, right? They followed these rules, and I know it was never easy for my three. I know it was probably never easy for any of your children, but they did one of our basic tenets, which is to care for self and others, right? And they really follow that. But I think it's time to recognize the progress we've made. I've been saying this over the past couple of weeks. We need to reward our students now by giving them a choice. And I like how you all said that is a choice. And so for those that are choosing to, or their parents perhaps are choosing for them to keep their masks on for whatever reason, that is something to be respected. But then for many who feel more comfortable and are ready to take the masks off, then that's also to be respected. So I've been saying hopefully this is a path back to normal. And with that, I'd like to call the question. It is officially, Christina, rescinding mask policy. Do I need to read all the numbers? It's on the table. No, thank you. Okay.
No,
so,
you do not. I'll give it to Mike. Michael has it. So
okay, and then I'll give it to Karen. So with that, I'm going to call people as I see them on the screen. So Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Yes, it's a yes to rescind the policy. Yes. Okay. Mr. Michael Joseph Mercantante.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Kowalski.
Yes.
Mr. Kittle.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Downey.
yes.
Ms. Hirsch.
Yes.
Ms. Costin.
Yes.
And Kathleen Stowe is a yes. That passes unanimously 8-0, which I think is a great statement. So with that, I feel like a preacher at the holidays. Please keep joining us. This is my come to all of our meetings. We will have one next week, and we'd love to have the community continue to engage with us, and there will be public comment next week. I know Dr. Jones will probably send out a note with a lot more detail this evening, which would be helpful. But until then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, I just want you to know that my kids were listening in the background and they're all jumping up and down.
My kids are also jumping up and down, but that's just because it's 7:30. I move we adjourn.
Can I get a second? Mr.
Second.
Kelly?
I'll second
Okay.
it. Nope.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Nope, that's fine. We'll give it to you, Ms. Kowalski. You got it up. All right, we have to do a roll call again. Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. Michael Joseph?
Yes.
Karen Kowalski? Okay, yes. Cody Kittle?
Yes.
Christina Downey?
Yes.
Karen Hirsch?
Yes.
Laura Costin?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great vacation. Good evening.
Thanks.